I want to welcome all of you here and thank Elizabeth for presenting the session. Before we get started, I want to thank our sponsors, our champion level sponsors, which are Unique Management, Stat Courier, Midwest Tape, the Equinox Open Library Initiative, and the Evergreen Collaborative Development Initiative. And I am going to turn this right over to Elizabeth. Elizabeth, what do you need from me?
Um, Let me see if I can share my screen.
And I'll stop sharing now, which
Okay.
it will show both of them, but I'll just give you the whole thing.
Okay, that looks like my screen.
And it'll take a minute for mine to go away. There we go. All right, take it away. If you all have questions, put them in chat and I will be moderating that for you, Elizabeth, so you don't have to
Okay,
pay attention to it.
I will not pay attention to it because
Okay.
it's way too distracting to do that. Okay, the name of this session is actually Batches, Baskets, Buckets, and Book Bags. And it is all about groups and containers of item and bib records. So with item records, we have two things. We have a batch, which is not a formal term, but a batch to me is a group of items that you pull together for some particular task. And that group goes away when you shut the tab or when you are no longer on that screen or whatever. So it's a temporary group of items that you are going to do something with. I think of it as like a book truck full of books that you are handling in some way. An item bucket is a persistent group of items. So you have a bunch of things on that book truck and you are putting them in a box or you're putting them in a container of some kind. And the item bucket is a persistent group. It's a container that stays on the system until you delete it. So you can have one that is in active use over weeks and months, or that you look at every year for some reason or whatever. But that bucket, the items will stay in that bucket. And with bibliographic records, we have three things. One is a basket, which is a temporary group of that should say titles, temporary group of titles that goes away when you clear that basket or end the session. It's really a shopping basket for the staff catalog. And a record bucket is a persistent group of bib records that stays on the system until the bucket is deleted and that has very recently undergone an amazing transformation with angularization. And a book bag is also known as my lists, and that's a patron version of record buckets. So item batches are items that you bring together. Usually it's because of some project. For example, you are going to batch update them, or you're going to update the inventory dates in them, or you're managing items that are going in and out of storage, special projects of all kinds. And again, the batches are not persistent. They just live in the moment and then they disappear. So this is what a batch looks like. A batch is what you get when you are in item status and you start putting items into it. So one way to put items into your batch is to just scan the item barcodes. The other way is to upload a text file. So you might have a text file of barcodes that came from a report of some kind, or for whatever reason, you have it in that format and you can just upload it here. Um, Doing it by scanning them is very convenient when you have pulled a bunch of books off the shelf because you're going to put them on a display or you're going to recatalog them in some way. You're going to move them to a different section or whatever. And either way, you get a list like this. And in real life, it may be that you start with a file that you upload and then you scan some additional ones to get it in there. And this is what that looks like. So one of the common things to do is that you have put a group of items into item status, so you have them as a batch, and you're going to select all of them. So we have the option to select all, and you're going to do something to all of them. And this is the screen that has, I think, maybe the most actions possible in the system. Basically, if it's something you could do to an item, it's listed here. So we might be trying to cancel transits on them, or update the inventory, or mark them all as damaged, or whatever we're doing. We have a lot of options here. In fact, we have so many options here, actions here, that I have listed them all because they are too long to fit on easily on a screen. So you've really got everything, and it's nice that they are grouped somewhat so that you can, it makes it a little easier to find the things you're trying to do. So in the first example, I said you were going to select them all and then do something to them all, and then you're done. But if you think about it, you may have some mini batches within this larger batch. So for some reason, I felt these were important because I was going to do something different with them. I don't actually remember, but I'm assuming that the thing that's different about them is they have a different form of prefix than the others do, and that I might be wanting to do that. You can sort any of these columns by clicking on the column heading, and that's really how you figure out what mini batches you have. For example, I can see that some of these are available, some are missing, some are checked out. I might want to sort by status because I want to go do something different with the missing ones. They don't really belong in this same batch, and I'm going to handle those in some different way. And to get the most out of being able to sort and select, you really want to control what columns you have showing, which you can do under the options here. When you do what I did here, which is you took a group of items and you knew you wanted to make some change to them, but you wanted them to stay here. This little symbol that people sometimes have trouble reading, it's like a little checkbox thing. This is just to let you know it's still here and you can still do things with it, but you've already taken an action on that group. And I did mention you should consider controlling what you have. Most people have a set thing, and this is what by default comes up when I go into item status. But if you're using it for a project, you might want different things on there. So you can come here, this is that last column, and you can determine which things. So the ones that are checked in green are the things that are currently in the display. I can remove some of those that are not relevant to what I'm trying to work on, or I can add some additional ones. But either way, you can get everything that you want and need to sort or to make sense of the individual items by making changes here. You also, on this dropdown, have the option to manage the column widths and as well as what columns appear. And that's sometimes useful in being able to really see what you're doing and see what is there. You also have the option to print the full grid, which prints the list as a table. I don't find that terribly useful, but it might, especially if you didn't have too many columns and it fit okay. The thing that is incredibly useful on a screen like this is the ability to download full CSV. So you're downloading all those items as a CSV file so that you can open it in Excel or Google Sheets or any other program that works with CSV, because you want to do more analysis or get different kinds of reports of those things, or do totals and all of that sort of thing that you can do in a spreadsheet that you can't do just in a grid of items on your screen. So that's a batch of items. Item buckets is what you use when a batch is just not enough. So the batch lives in the moment and then disappears. So it's not good for ongoing projects or projects where the items might need to be changed back at the end of the summer, or another staff member needs to look at the list to help make decisions, or any kind of project that you might be working on and get interrupted. And we know that being interrupted is something that happens a lot in a library. So if you don't want to accidentally lose something because you were interrupted just after you scanned 60 items, then you might consider putting things into an item bucket, because an item bucket is a durable, persistent container of items on the system, and they stay on that stays on the system um, until you delete it, and it can be shared with other staff. So one way, and maybe the most common way to get items into an item bucket, is you start with putting them into item status. And here I uploaded some Wakefield barcodes, and you mark the ones, some or all of the ones that you want to put in a bucket, and you've got the option to add to item bucket. In this case, I've got a batch that includes things from different parts of the collection, but I want to put the ones here that are biography into a separate item bucket that I presumably am going to call something like biography. And when you select the option to add to an item bucket, you get the option here to, this is a drop down which would show me all my existing buckets, and I could select one there. Or this is a new bucket, so I'm going to call this biography project and add those items to this new bucket. And you can go directly to item buckets when you want to start one or want to find one that you already have. It's in the cataloging drop down, and it's also usually on your portal page. And this is the item bucket interface. So I've selected to go into the item bucket, and I'm not looking at a particular bucket yet. And here are the options you have. You have this drop down, which is doing several things at once, because basically it's the only drop down. So one of the things I could do is click on new bucket, and it would ask me to give it a name and a description, and it would make that the current bucket. Or I can select a bucket from this list of all my buckets, and then I could edit the bucket in some way, for example, change the name or add a description or something like that. Or I could select one of these and then choose to delete that, or I can share the bucket, or I can open a shared bucket. I'll talk about shared buckets in a minute. And so these are all the things that I already have, and these are the options of what I can do with them. So here I am creating a new bucket, giving it a name. This is way better than I usually do. I tend to call my buckets things like new project or test or something like that. It's a really good habit to um, use an accurate name and a description that tells what you're trying to do. So here it's my picture book project, but what I'm trying to do is go identify and add stickers and suffixes to special groups of picture books. I never do this in real life, but it's a really good idea. Um, the, there's this whole concept of shared buckets, and there really is no way to share a bucket, an item bucket, within the interface here. So if we look at a bucket that we already have, it'll look something like this. It'll have a bucket number here, and it'll have that name that it was given, and it would tell you who created it and how many items are in there. If I did this bucket, if this were my bucket, I could share this by sending an email message to a colleague saying, I put them all in bucket 2752. Go take a look at it. And they go into the bucket interface. They choose a shared bucket and they type in that bucket number that you gave them. So it's sharing in a sense, but it's not computer. It's really like what we used to call sneaker net. You run over to somebody else's desk and you say, "Look at 2752," and that's the level of sharing that we currently have in item buckets. So when we have a bucket, we have two options to add things to the bucket, and the one of them is to go to this pending items and scan things into pending items and then move them to the bucket. The best option, in my opinion, is what we did earlier, which was went to item status and you scan them into item status, or you upload a file of them to item status, and then you choose the option to move them to a bucket, because you just don't have the same options here that you like uploading a file that you have in item status. And so here's the pending. Again, it gives me the option to scan things, but it doesn't give me any better options like uploading a file. And you can add individual items to a bucket without going through item status by when you're in the view item. So we're looking at an item record here, and we have the option to, under actions, to add the item to a bucket. And if we choose that, we can get it into the bucket. When you have your item bucket, you can do what you could also do on item status. So you can select a group of them or all of them, and then you can go to your actions. But we have far fewer actions here. So we don't have the action, for example, to update the inventory date. We're missing a lot of actions here. If we need them, though, we have the one thing that we need, which is open an item status. And then when you're there, you have the full set of actions to use. Now I want to talk about baskets. So baskets are a temporary group of bibliographic records in both the public and staff catalog. Baskets can be used to pull together a group of items and then place a hold on them as a batch. In the public catalog, patrons can use uh, put things in a basket and move the basket to a new or existing My List. And in the staff catalog, baskets can be used to select titles and move them into a bucket. And uh, in any of those instances, you want to make sure that you clear the bucket so that because it just sort of accumulates things. And you want to make sure that you're not accidentally adding new things to a completely unrelated basket that has things in it. And you especially want to be careful if some part of this is placing holds. And records stay in the basket till you clear it or until you end your session. So here I am in the staff catalog. And the way to choose things and put them in your basket is to select them here. So I could have selected the first 10 pages, the first 10 items here, the first page, or I am hand selecting these. So I click on this one, and this increments to 2. If I decided, oh, maybe I'll include this one too, then this would turn to 3. But if I uncheck it because I changed my mind, this will go back to 2. So this is really handy in circumstances when you're doing what we call shopping. I'm shopping in the database for things like this, which was to do probably a carousel or some other public thing. I was actually shopping for things that I thought had attractive covers, frankly, and so that was part of my choice. And as I went on, I found some that I liked better and turned them off and on. So you can turn them on and off all day. This will follow you and give you and put into the basket the ones that you have currently chosen. And this is just one thing as a staff person that you can do. I'm placing a hold for this patron. I have a bunch of things in a basket, and instead of placing the holds one at a time, I can place a title hold on all of these records, hold pending because I have to click on the place holds button. This um, this is useful if you're working with a patron, so you're helping them find things. It's not useful if they come up to the desk and start not as useful and start reading you off a list of things they want holds on. Now, this is the best part of all of this, which is record buckets. So remember, the basket just comes and goes, and you can't save it in any way or do anything with it. But record buckets are the persistent container for bibliographic records. And they stay on the system associated with your account until you delete them or transfer them. Transfer them is new. These are useful for multiple processes, everything from the mundane cataloging tasks like merging duplicate bib records, doing batch edit, building carousels, pulling together things that you're going to want to use on some kind of project, like books for Pride Month in June or Black History Month or other kinds of things that you want to bring together a group of records that have something in common and then be able to use them in some way. And the angular bucket record buckets, let me rephrase that. Record buckets became angularized in release 3.14 with really major improvements in both the interface itself and in the things that you can do with it. So this is something that's not new. This is still there. It's still good. It is not part of the 314 thing. So I have a basket. I have some things over here. Instead of clicking on each one, for whatever reason, I did a search on gardening and I want all of them. There were 549 books that matched my search, and I want to get all of them into a bucket. I want to work with all of them because I'm doing a comprehensive study of our gardening related collection. So without checking anything, I've got this option, which is add all search results. And so that will put all the search results, all 549 of them, into the basket. And in this case, I am selecting them by hand. This is again not new. So I like this one. I don't like this one. I go ahead and I see I've selected 11 already. And I can come here and I have this option, which is add basket to bucket. And if I chose either of those, selecting them all, or just starting with a selected basket and wanting to put them in a bucket. So in any instance where I'm trying to get things into a bucket, a batch of things into a bucket, um, I get this option. So this is, do you want to find one of your existing buckets? Are you trying to add this and you've already have some things in it? And so here I would use the drop down and say, yes, I want to add them to this selected bucket. Maybe I have a previous gardening related one. Or if I don't have one and I'm starting a new project, I would put them in new bucket and I would give it a title and a description, and it would put the things in my new bucket. And shared bucket means somebody shared a bucket with me, and I can click on this and I can type in 2759 or whatever that bucket number was. So those are handy things, and they are still handy things, even with all the new things that have come in the angularized catalog, angularized bucket interface. This is just here because it looks very much, this is the old record bucket interface. It looks pretty much exactly like the item one that we saw. And like, yes, you have all of these options and they're here and you have a list of things, but there's no, you see, I have duplicate merge ones and I have some other duplicates because, I started a project again. These sort alphabetically, but but based on case. And there's nothing here that tells me whether for any of these I have 10 records or 2 records or 150 records. So it works. That's not great. This is what happens when you go to record buckets in 314 and beyond. And this is the new look of your list of buckets. So the first thing I notice is that we have an option here to favorite, to use a star to mark something as a favorite bucket. Now, if you use Google Workspace or many other different kind of sharing programs and all of that, the star is a familiar concept. The star means whatever you want that star to mean. It might mean that it truly is your favorite, or you might be using it just to mark what's a current project. What are the projects that are actually active at this point and that I'm actually working on at this point? And you can, as with all these actions, you can select something and then use the actions menu to give it the star or to remove the star. Here we have a list of all the buckets that we have with their bucket ID, with their name, the description that we have, with the number of entries. So I know that I have over 93, or I have 93 things for books for the beach, and that may be sufficient, or maybe I'm trying to hit 100. I have 50 things for the Adult Books Pride Month. I only have a lesser number in some of these, so I can see kind of what the status in terms of entries is. And then these columns are for something that I dismissively referred to as SneakerNet. These are where you can see, you can share things in different ways and see who you've shared things with. So you can share a bucket with another org unit. So maybe 2 library branches are cooperating on a project, or 2 separate libraries in a consortium are cooperating on a project. So they want to share a bucket back and forth. Or you can share things with individual users only to view. So I gave somebody permission to view this. And here you can give somebody, a user, permission to actually view and edit something. So you have a lot of options here that just never existed before. And it's telling us who the owner is. There are some actions here under the actions menu. But we also have little action icons that are edit, carousel, share, and delete. And up here, down here, it's telling me who I'm sharing stuff with. Up here, it's telling me how many buckets I have. I have 7. I have 3 that have favorites. 2 of these are recent. I have 2 of them are shared with others, and if any are shared with me, and I forgot to go share something with myself from another um, library, then I would see what my shared ones are. And here's what's visible to me. One of the things you're going to want to do if you're moving to 314 and you plan on using this, or if you have moved to 314 and you're just you you're running into some issues with it, is to check all of the settings that have to do with containers um, uh, that can be set in different ways so that you understand how the system is thinking of sharing something with an org unit, another org unit, and who that means will have access to that, and to also try to figure out what's happening, has been happening within your library, the way that people are currently sharing things and all of that, and revisit some of those patterns to make the most of the new options here. And in the bucket actions, excuse me, I chose this one, and here is a list of the actions that I had. Some of them were things I could also do over here with these options, but some of them are here, like the add to favorites, or to do a mark batch edit on these, or to export the records, or to transfer bucket ownership. Uh, you may have been in a situation where somebody owned a bucket that was very useful. Maybe it held all the things that had been changed for summer reading, so that they had been set to a different loan period, and those kinds of things. And that person then left, and it's hard to access their bucket for to use it to go make some other changes back. So here you can transfer this bucket. So I own this now, but somebody else is going to take over the stewardship of that bucket. And you can also upload records, create add things to a bucket by uploading a group of TCNs or bib ID numbers. So this is the bucket sharing interface. So I want to, this is showing me who I have given view permissions to. And I've given view permissions to Susan. Susan also works at Salem, which is the library that I'm logged in as right now. I can select Susan and remove her if I no longer think she deserves this level of viewing my bucket. Or I could add a user, in which case it would let me go search through users and choose somebody else who should also have view access to this. And if I click on the user with edit permissions, it shows me that Simone has a higher level of permissions than Susan has. So Susan, I wanted her to just take a look at this list. Simone, I wanted to have be able to take a look at this list, but also add some titles and remove some titles. So basically, Simone and I are both co-managing this bucket. And then libraries lets me decide. So I'm being Salem, and I can decide I'm working on this project and I want the Beverly Public Library and Gloucester Public Library to also have view edit permissions. And this is where you need to understand how your permissions structures are set up. So you understand, what does it mean if Gloucester has edit permissions? Does that mean everybody in Gloucester can edit this, or just or how that works? And you really want to um, think about that and look at what your permission setup actually looks like. Uh, Now, here are the new options that came with, in addition to just that structure of this, the new options in working with buckets that came as part of 314. This is maybe my favorite thing in the world. So I'm doing a search here on Scotland fiction, and I have 3 titles that I've selected. Those are the 3 things that are in the basket, and I want to move them to one of my favorites, which is this Scotland bucket. It's a favorite because I favorited it. It's also showing me some recent buckets. Now, this column is a tab next to facets. So when I start searching, I'm looking at the normal facets here, but I can switch that tab. So instead of looking at the facets, I'm looking at my favorite buckets and some recent buckets. So I've selected a couple of things. I could have selected many things. And if I click over here, it's asking me, oh, I see you have 3 things in your basket, and it'll give me the option of adding them. So it gives you a very fast way to just quickly throw a couple of things into a bucket. I didn't need to look this bucket up. I didn't need to do anything but select some things and have this appearing here as a favorite thing. The other thing that's nice is the names of these are links to the bucket itself. So I can very easily throw a couple of things in there and then decide, I wonder if my Scotland bucket is complete. So let me take a look at it and see if it needs more romances or more historical things or whatever. So by having these just appear here, hiding behind the facets, but easy to expose, then you can put things here. Um, in some cases, you may be searching around for some other thing. You don't even have your buckets on your mind, but you come across a title that you realize that's something that would be good in the adult books for Pride Month thing, and so you just add it there while you're thinking of it, rather than going through the other processes to get it into a bucket. So this is, to me, a genius. It's so useful. Meanwhile, over here, in case that weren't enough, we have a kind of variation on a theme. So over here, we have a button that says Add to Bucket. Um, if I if and it's both a button and a drop down, which I sometimes find confusing. If I open that drop down, as I see I've done here, then I get the same thing I got over in the left sidebar, which is I see my favorites and I see the recent ones that I've selected, and so I can add this one to my adult pride thing there. If I didn't want to add it to any of those things, I could just click on the Add to Bucket, and that would give me the usual options of being able to start a new bucket, add to an existing bucket that may or may not be here or whatever. So it's become so easy to toss things, or with careful curation, to choose things that you want to have appear in a bucket with a lot fewer keystrokes. You can get to that record buckets interface by going here or in here or here. Oh, I forgot this part. You can also add a bucket directly from the bib record. So if you have a situation where you're not looking at search results, you're actually doing something with this bib record, you do have the least glamorous way to add a button, which is find it to a bucket, which is to find it under other actions. And speaking of, I love bibs in a bucket. It just sounds to me, I don't know, like a children's book, librarian children. So this is me opening one of the buckets that I had. It's giving me the full number and the full name. I can return here to the buckets interface. It is showing me the actions. So I have pretty much the same actions that I've always had. I can export things and remove things and so on. I can move things to a different bucket. So I can select a group of these and put them in another bucket. And I can merge records. Now, merging records is something that catalogers will be familiar with, and the you currently, or pre 314, to merge records, you had to select the records that needed to be merged. So this looks like a duplicate to me. And you had to put them into a bucket, and then you had to go to that bucket, and then you had to perform the merge itself. Now, I have my merge bucket. That's what this is. I made it one of my favorites. So every time I come across what seems to be a duplicate, I can select the candidates that should probably be merged, and then just add them here, click on here, and I'm in the merge interface. So this has, I need to go back and count how many keystrokes this actually replaces. And it certainly makes it a little easier to merge things as you come across them, rather than think you're going to remember and do it later, or whatever, or interrupt whatever you're doing to go handle that merge. And if you haven't seen the merge interface, the next step where you open that and choose the action of merging, this is what that looks like. This is what it always looked like. There's more information up on top, but it shows you um, the two screens, lets you decide which one do you want to use as the lead record. The lead record is which is the good one that you're trying to keep, um, and uh, and you can um, decide here which is longer or better, and so on. I'm only showing this because it's a screen that I think is particularly useful and well designed. It's really nice to look at these two next to each other. And for the catalogers, you can switch back and forth between the flat text editor and the full editor.
There's
And
a comment in here from Robert. Any chance they rigged a way to stop me from merging before I save my edits?
I don't think there's any change to that part,
Nope.
but I feel you. I not that that's ever happened to me, but yeah.
But still the ability to undelete a record if you need to go back in there and do it
Yes,
again.
yes. And this is the carousel option here. So again, I'm looking at my record buckets. I select one, and I could choose the actions menu or just this little kind of picture thing over here, and it just wants me to name the new carousel. And this is now we're into the visible carousel visible at library. I actually had to go choose this. I think that the other one should lead directly to this, and set this up and have the carousel. So that is another important part of uh, of the things that you can do with a bucket. Um, I can quibble about oh, I think this should connect to that or whatever, but um, I cannot tell you. Somebody could how many different launchpad bugs this development fulfilled. So this development, which was done by ECDI, there were at least a dozen individual launchpad bugs for why does it do this and how can we make it do this and this should work and that should work. And we're really fortunate to have worked with Equinox and have them um, really rebuild this in Angular, but not just angularize it, but add all of these new features and streamline things considerably. And I really, it's normally I see development and I'm like, oh, that looks great. Now here are the other things they should have done, and I just don't feel that way about this. It's really quite quite elegant.
There was a question as well, and I do want to go back because I answered it in chat, but I qualified it. Mary asked, is there any relationship planned between record buckets and item buckets? Um, so,
Yeah, you can answer that one, Ruth.
okay, and I'm in a weird spot answering it, but
I
I'm gonna
know.
do it anyway.
Yeah.
So this project, the bib record buckets and record or bucket administration was the first of what we envisioned for a complete buckets overhaul. And so the Evergreen Collaborative Development Initiative, which includes Noble and 7 other library organizations, consortiums, and libraries, pooled resources to do this development. It was, as you can see, a pretty big project. And so we prioritized this because, well, because catalogers do the things. And because there were so many Launchpad tickets dealing with the existing record buckets prior, which of course we know then leaves item buckets out there and leaves user buckets. Uh, so I do know that my qualified yes is I actually know that there is somebody working on item buckets right now out in the community. It is not ECDI, but there is a definite plan to see all of the buckets come into this new sharing ecosystem and also have their respective issues dealt with. As we know, there are always going to be issues. That's what Launchpad keeps telling us, but a significant improvement. There is not at this point a set timeline for that, but they are um, in an active state within the community for updating.
And I have to say, as a representative of Noble on ECDI, when when we got back the specs for how this was going to advance, I was a little disappointed that it was going to only the step one was only going to involve the record buckets. And I thought, not for long, but I thought, well, they should have made the same improvement to record buckets and item buckets and possibly patron buckets, that they should keep them all at the same level. But I was
Mm-hmm.
totally wrong. And
And
yeah,
I was in the same boat as you, Elizabeth,
and
because
angularizing all of this really set a pattern for how to do it.
yes, there was a lot of groundwork that was done in addition to just record buckets, and that really needed to be done prior to what's next, which is finishing, I hate using the word, the next steps in terms of the other types of buckets. But having that interplay that you're talking about between record buckets and item buckets, possibly.
Yeah.
I don't know a specific work just for that, but just takes a launch pad ticket to get it on people's radar and say, oh, there's this out here. Maybe we should look at how that's included as well.
Okay, let me go back to my last few slides here. One of the things I was wondering about, and I meant to add a slide showing this from last year's presentation and all of that, but there was always this search query option in as part of the record bucket. And it was a place where you could do cool, Boolean searches and all of that. And so I wondered, like, they took that away, which really I only liked because it was, I mean, I did use it, but but I really liked showing it at conferences and showing it to people and stuff. But then I realized there's no point in having a separate interface for that. I am here in bibliographic record buckets. I have a search here. I can do the same kind of Boolean searching. So this is like painter or artist and Holland or Netherlands or Dutch. It's the same example I use all the time. But it works just fine. You do the search here, and here are my results. Here's that search. And since I'm here, I have all the options to add these all to the um, to a bucket or to go through them and decide which ones I really care about, or go over here to my buckets and pull things in and all of that. So that separate interface, which I loved for its ugly geekiness, is turned out to be kind of unnecessary. This I wanted to make sure I got to show this because if you're into doing reports, you now have an option in reports to send the report output to the bibliographic the bibliographic records to a new or an existing record bucket. So buckets is a new part of the output of things, and that's true whether it's a scheduled report or an individual report. This is strong advice. Read the documentation. The documentation is excellent. There's just so much here that it, I mean, I hate to say it's so much here. There's actually worth reading the documentation, but
It is.
it really is. And this is really like every question that I had was like, oh, that's what that means. And so that's good. And then again, the looking at the container permissions and practices. Last quick thing is baskets for patrons. So I'm a patron. I'm in the catalog. I'm selecting things. You can see what catalog I'm on and the preponderance of music. So I am selecting some things having to do with pianos. It is going into my basket, which for some reason is way up here. So I've got 10 things in that basket. I have the option to add the basket to a saved list. And here is my saved list. And here I can clear the basket when they do it, or leave that basket there because I'm going to also do something else with it. And here's my list of lists, even though there's only one. So patrons can make lists using the same basket concept, but instead of going to a bucket, they're saving it to a list. And here's my list as a patron. And I had the option of making this public, and making it public just means give it a URL so I can send it to my friends. And so that's what patrons can do. Oh, patrons can also put things in a basket and then use that to go place a batch hold on all of them at once.
Awesome. All right, now is the time where we're running down in time.
I'm done.
Is there anything specific that you still want to cover, Elizabeth?
No, this is
Okay,
this there.
questions. Quick questions, anything. Also, I do want to say that the record buckets are 314 and newer, and the community demo servers that are provided by Equinox and Mobius, those are both running those. So if you go to, well, you go through all of the evergreen-ils.org website and get to, or you Google Evergreen Community Demo Servers and get to that page, you can test run these. And that's, thank you, Blake, for putting that in there.
And you'll really want to, because
Yeah.
there's a lot here. Tomorrow there's another session on Angular staff catalog tools at 1 p.m. Um, which is me talking about buckets and Carol Witt talking about the holdings editor. Uh, my
Which is
part,
exciting.
yeah, it is. My part is going to be almost exactly the same, with one or two things that I realize that no, I left out of this, but that is quite
And
quite similar.
Jason put a comment in here too, that column filters on the bucket grids are more powerful, and they absolutely are.
Yeah, the column filters is one of the things that didn't make the cut, but will make the cut for tomorrow.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Elizabeth. This was great. And if y'all have any questions, you can track her down. The slides are going to be available, and the recording for the session will also be available as time permits and the things get processed.
And I've been doing the same basic presentation at almost every conference for the last several years, and this was the first year. There were always new things, but this is the first year that's had such a transformation that really I was excited to do it.
I was excited to have you do. You did a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you all. And I'm going to get the interstitial slide up for the next session that's in here. So thanks.
Thank you.